Hello and welcome to the NEWSPASTE Podcast with me, your host, Johnny Vedmore. I'm here again. I'm looking forward to this conversation with a man who I've talked with on multiple occasions, and happy to talk with again. Catching up by this is going to be much more comprehensive than any of the conversations we've had before, where we've kind of skirted along one issue for a short amount of time on TNT when I was on TNT radio. No, this is going to be much more a get to know James Roguski. Hey, how are you today?
I'm exhausted, as I told you before we started recording. I almost pulled an all-nighter last night doing a music video, and there's so much to talk about. So thanks for having me. I feel very relaxed and looking forward to talking about whatever comes up.
Awesome. So how if someone said, "What do you do as a job?" How would you describe your job?
Well, I wouldn't use the word job. It's a passion. I'll give you the story. I learned this almost 20 years ago. I had a moment in my life where life was good. I really have no complaints. I'm blessed, on so many different levels. But I was working, I had managed a couple of mom and pop herb and nutrition and homeopathic stores going back almost 30 years now. And life was good and I was happy. I thought I was doing good work, but there was something nagging me that was like, something more, right? What is it?
You're
that
talking
I
about
should
your
be doing?
wife. You should be careful about talking about your wife publicly like that.
Don't have a wife. Have a 20 plus year wonderful partner in life,
Okay.
soulmate, Marissa.
Not Naga though.
Oh no,
Oh
she's
no.
the most
Oh.
spectacular nagger. She is professional. Okay. I haven't learned the technique. I think it only there's a certain school that people go to, and I haven't been able to get admitted to the
Yeah.
school. So I am the naggy. Makes me a better man.
I
Makes me
think
a
the
better
girls'
man.
schools, to be honest, but
Yeah.
let's not stick there. I'm in trouble
Um,
now.
but we should come back to that because nagging is actually how things get done in the world. And so, but I was, something was nagging at me internally. I should have said probably that, what am I supposed to be doing? And so I got in used to have a pickup truck at the time, and I had an hour-long commute across Los Angeles to get from home and back to work. And I just sat in my truck for a moment and contemplating this. I said, God, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. And boom, an idea comes into my head. And I can't tell you how that moment changed my life, right? It's a long story. I don't even think with 2 hours, I don't think we have time for all my long stories. The point of it was it's just joyous to do what you are personally inspired to do. So I put it out there, an idea came into my head. I pursued that and it changed the course of my life. I try to do that as often as I possibly can. It's like, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? What am I capable of doing? What's my skill set? That's not a job, that's joyous. The only problem is you have all these ideas and there's only 24 hours in a day. And so you do what you can, right?
Yeah.
And so when you go to bed exhausted, last night I went to bed exhausted at 2 a.m. I finished a music video in support of, I don't know if you're aware, but in British Columbia, they're playing this crazy bird flu game with a farm that raises ostriches. And, they want to murder, they call it culling, right? They want to murder a bunch of ostriches just because somebody says so.
Sacrificial. It sounds sacrificial, doesn't it?
Oh, it's horrible. And so anybody can go see my latest work if you go to cullingismurder.com. CULLING, cullingismurder.com. They try to make it sound nice. Oh, we're gonna call some of these birds. It's horrific, and hope people like it.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, what you're saying there, I mean, it's kind of your intentions, your want, your desire, but also that what inspires you is all of those things. And what you're talking about is something that I've done as well. I was actually talking about this. I was talking about this with Tony Goslin yesterday. We met up in a pub in Cardiff, and we were having a conversation and got a bit deep at times, after a few drinks. I was, I was saying there comes a point where in your life where you've just got to keep stepping forward, and that's it. You just got to keep stepping forward towards a thing you think is the right thing to do at that moment.
Mhm.
And that's how I define inspiration or being inspired, is that it's a constant. And you said you try and do it as often as possible. I kind of like,
Oh, every morning. When you wake up in the morning and you're laying there and you're like, oh, okay, I'm awake. It's a new day. Um, Most people don't just instantaneously bounce out of bed and get going. You have a little bit of time to think. And I've learned to just watch the ideas come through. You think about this, you think about that, you think about the other thing. Um, I had no idea I was going to do this music video yesterday. When I woke up in the morning, I had no idea. I was involved in a meeting with some friends, Dr. Rima Labo, Connie Shields, Doug Porter. Got to give them credit for the idea. We started working on this in the morning, and by 2 a.m. the next morning, boom, it's done. Right? Had no idea. Didn't know I was going to be doing that yesterday, but it just took over because it was a great idea. It wasn't my idea; it was Connie's idea. Everybody contributed, and I hope people like it. Go to callingismurder.com. You never know. And so whenever I hear people say, oh, there's nothing you can do, the government or, oligarchs or, the Illuminati or whatever, oh, what are you going to, well, you can do whatever it is you can do, whatever that may be. And I don't have any musical talent. That's the best part. Okay. But yeah,
I'll play you a little violin, but I can't play violin. No, I could play guitar
yeah.
and sing and do a load of other stuff, but
it's interesting how people defeat themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it, I think, and maybe this is an idea that we can talk about at some point. I did a Spaces on Twitter/X yesterday, and one of the things that we were talking about is the need for people to rebuild, restructure, reconstitute their support base. As an individual man, woman, or even child, who do you trust? Who do you have behind you that if shit went down, they're going to be there for you, right? And so what I think has happened over the last 5 years is people's support network, their family, their friends, their neighbors, their people they work with, go to school, go to church, community, whatever it might be. Some of those people lost their minds, and those friendships were destroyed. And now a lot of people feel very, very alone. Okay. And one of the things I've done, which people think is crazy, I'll do it right now. I always give my phone number. My phone number is 310-619-3055. That's in California, so you got to put
Quick, scammers, get on it.
Yep, scammers, get on it. 310-619-3055. Man, I've met some awesome people because most people don't have the gumption to just pick up the phone and make a connection. Okay. And so anybody who calls me at least has the guts to pick up the phone and call, right? You can text or whatever. But what's missing on a smaller level is, if you have, and I encourage people to do this, get a brandy new, old school, paper address book, and put the people that love, and trust, and the ones that have your back in that address book. Now, used to be, you probably could fill that up. But now you're like, does so-and-so deserve to be in my little black book of, friends and support, and my allies? Okay. You could be like Santa Claus. You can have a nice list and a naughty list,
Mhm.
and and
You
and
could be
maybe
like
a new.
Epstein. You could, you could have
I
your little
think I
black
think there
book set
were.
up in
I think that was
sections.
all naughty. I don't think anybody was nice.
Ah, yeah,
But
yeah. All right.
but the point is, what if you lose your phone?
Hmm.
Do you know how to get in touch with anybody? Do
Hmm.
you remember their phone? I mean, I still remember my childhood phone number,
Yeah, me too. Me too.
and I
Lots of
remember,
people do. I mean,
yeah, and I remember my girlfriend's phone number. But beyond that, I'm at a loss,
hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so I encourage people to build, identify your allies. Okay, if you had a list of your top 20 things, like if we wanted to talk just about politics and issues and all that sort of stuff, what's the most important thing to Johnny Vedmore? Top of the list. Okay. And then down through, 3, 5, 10, 20,
Chocolate.
100,
Come on.
whatever. There you go.
Mm.
Um, I'm going to almost guarantee that your list is different than mine.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Because yours got chocolate on it.
It's pretty darn high on the list, but
Yeah.
I'm not in short supply at the moment, so I'm doing okay.
Good. All right.
When I did a book 20 years ago, actually two books, but when I did a book 20 years ago, it's entitled "Your Doctor is a Liar." Okay,
Mhm.
it's all about cholesterol,
You
which
know my
is
doctor then?
exactly.
Because
If it's
yeah,
he's a medical doctor. Um, if I'm
I hate
pushing,
my doctor. Go on.
uh,
Sorry.
I'm pushing 65 years old, and the lie about cholesterol is older than I am. It started in the 50s. Okay.
Mhm.
And so as I was doing the research, I learned that one of the things that your body needs to make connective tissue, collagen, and more importantly, elastin, which keeps your arteries flexible and everything else, is copper, right? You have to have copper in your system to trigger enzymes and all that sort of thing. And one of the best sources of copper is chocolate. I was like, well, that's all the
Mm.
evidence I need,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
justify my habit.
To
Right.
bathe in chocolate. That's all I need to know to go as far as possible.
And so, to talk about, finish talking about what I'm mentioning. A lot of people, after what has happened over the last 5 years, feel very, very alone. A
Mhm.
lot of people are like, oh, I can't talk to my family, I can't talk to my friends, work and all that sort of thing. Um, and a lot of them will be very lucky. They think they're lucky. Oh, I got one or two or three people that I can just say anything to, and they're not going to, get triggered and um, block me or whatever. Okay. And, if that's the case, you need to put a zero on the end of whatever that number is. If you got three people, um, see what you can do to find more so that you have 30. And then you're going to feel a little more secure that, you've got support. It's not just you against the man. It's not you against the government and, the system or whatever. And if you got 30, put another zero on it. You got 300.
Mhm.
And if you know 300 people and they all know 300 people, suddenly you're an influencer.
Mhm.
But if you're trying to change everybody's mind and you're arguing with everybody online, which is what social media is designed to do, is to get you to fight about what you disagree with. Johnny, we could go down the list and let's find something we can disagree on.
No, I will beat
Okay.
you in every argument.
Go for it.
I
But
will be right and you will be wrong,
that's how it
regardless. You can't.
that's how it
You
works.
don't tell. No, don't tell me that's how it works. That's not how it works. No, no. Go on. Sorry, I'm playing.
But if you watch how social media actually operates, the traction is when there's an argument going on.
Mm.
And what people don't realize is that every time you put your eyeballs, every time you click on a link, you go to some website and you see advertisements loading. Like nowadays, you go to try to read an article and you get a paragraph and an ad, and then another ad, and then a paragraph and a couple more ads, right? Your attention is being monetized. And if they can start a fight going, right? Oh my God, the money that they
Nudge
make
you,
by
nudge you here, nudge you there, nudge you everywhere.
Every time you go to CNN or MSNBC or the BBC or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, you're you're causing money to be transferred from businesses that are advertising to billionaires.
Mhm.
So, now, if your NEWSPASTE with Johnny Vedmore, has an ad on it, then I'm going to say that's a good thing. The more people that visit something like that, watch a Rumble video and an ad plays, you get a
Yeah,
micro
yeah, yeah.
penny or whatever it
I
might be.
like it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's good parts to every bad bit, but I mean, for me, I know that I go onto Facebook, I go to run ads. It says zero money taken, zero people reached for the entirety of the ad till it stops running the ad and says the ad's finished. That's been the way it's been now for 10 years. So there's no point in not 10 years, probably 7, 8 years, probably till since I first tried properly advertising in about 2017, and very soon after they were just cutting me off on advertising for a while, not on Twitter. It's the whole what you're talking there is the change in how the world works. There does need to be some point where people can make money, and you recognize that.
Mhm,
But the problem is that it's all of it's funneling into being percentage taken by the billionaires, and we
mhm.
keep going over this system over and over again. So all of that is funneled out to the billionaires. I just want to say about your point of community as well. That's like, for me, it was interesting how COVID worked in that sense because my community, they like didn't do what I expected them to do. I was living in two places during that time. I was over in South America, in Chile for parts of it, and I was in South Wales for parts of it, in Cardiff. And my community didn't. I thought they would all lock themselves away. That was all the experience when I was flying across countries and stuff. I was seeing all of this, like people terrified all the time. I thought
Mhm,
my community would just close up, but they just didn't. They actually like they were like sneaky. They all came to the park and all hung around together and they got to know each other for the first time. Instead of doing the thing that I thought would happen, which would be everybody would be at each other's throat. There were a couple of arguments here and there. I
mhm,
think there's a couple of people who don't dare talk to me because I must be the crazy guy, who believes in everything. He's
mhm,
flat Earth, aliens are everywhere. All that, they make it up in their own mind just
mhm,
for you not accepting their view on something which has been given to them. And I had some amazing conversations with people. Mostly, I found that it actually brought people together and that's kind of what they want to do, don't they? That also benefits the oligarchy because they
mhm.
want us to all rely on each other rather than relying on the state. So, do you think there's a massive element of that in there?
I think that the sowing of division weakens any movement. And so, what I have found, that's a wonderful experience that you've had that. I think that might be different than most people. I think
Mhm.
most people did,
Not what I experienced in Chile. We were walking down a street with a road, dusty road, no one on it, but every car that drives by would be someone going out the window because we weren't wearing masks out in the
Mhm,
middle of nowhere outside. It was just
mhm.
insane. Go on, sorry.
Yeah. And so, as the most important thing, from an individual man, woman, and child perspective, I think people need to focus first on themselves. They need to have a secure support system so that you got to take care of yourself first, or you can't help anybody. And it's not just you. It's not just prepping, going out in the woods and being self-sufficient and not relying on everybody, because that's just not as good as having a base of support, people that love you and understand you. And you can have a discussion, you can have a debate and an argument over a topic, but at the end, you clink your glasses together, you drink a beer, you have a good time. People can have a different opinion, um, but when times are hard, even if it's just as simple as, hey, let me borrow a power tool because I'm doing something and mine's on the
Mhm.
fritz, or hey, I made too much food, I got some leftovers, here you go. I enjoy that with our little neighborhood and our friends and family and everything. And if you don't have that, good Lord, you got to work to make that happen.
Yeah.
And it,
Yeah.
it can be work in today's society. People are moving around all the time, and you got to make new friends. And nowadays it's so divided. Orange man bad, and everything else across the world. Um, that's probably the most important thing. If you can wake up in the morning and follow whatever it is you're inspired to do, and you have connections to a group of people that are supportive of that, and vice versa, you for them, um, life is good. Life
Yeah.
can be very, very good. Then you get into the politics of what are these people trying to do in the world. um, then you decide where you want to put your effort, because it's overwhelming and nobody can work on and deal with everything. You got to pick and choose.
You try telling the old ladies in the park not to get their COVID jabs. I tell you, it's a hard task. They used to be a lot more aggressive about it, and now they're kind of like looking down, knowing, oh, I don't really want to, and I don't see the point of it. But he's right. So it is very interesting. I think in 2022, one thing that really surprised me was by that time I had kind of got to know almost everyone in my neighborhood in Cardiff,
Mhm, mhm,
in my community, and it was the first time I realized no one knew each other.
mhm,
They all keep themselves to themselves, and me and some other people I knew made a concerted effort to kind of get things like barbecues organized, other
mhm,
things, so
mhm,
that we could have an actual community going on, and we're going to need it for what comes next. So
mhm.
I mean, where did you grow up then? Whereabout did you grow up?
I don't know if I have grown up yet, but
Yeah.
I was born in northeastern Ohio, just outside of Youngstown, Ohio. Um, uh, Through high
Crossroads of
school, went to
America.
college in New England, and then in 1996, I had my life shredded. I went through bankruptcy, foreclosure, and divorce, and literally just left a lifetime behind. Moved out to California, started over, and ended up
That's
managing a
an old
couple of.
story, isn't it? Move out to California and start over. Isn't
Yep,
it in a few songs?
probably. I might have moved into Hotel California because it seems like I can't leave, but um,
Ah,
there's good and there's bad everywhere. And I just, quite frankly, got tired of freezing my ass off in New England in the wintertime. And so, it's raining here, which is a blessing because it means the fires are going to probably slow down a little bit.
mhm.
Uh, and, like I said, I managed a couple of mom and pop urban nutrition stores, and it really was an enormous blessing because you could not pay me to go to a medical doctor. You
Mm.
couldn't pay me to take an aspirin.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. I'm not just anti-vax, I'm anti-pharma.
yeah.
And so the things that I have been blessed to learn and be aware, there's technology out there that is straight out of Star Trek. And when you look at how doctors operate and surgeons and everything else, you just go, oh my God, they might as well be in the Stone Age. They have no idea, for all of their technology, all of their sophistication. And, they do a handful of, good and important things. Um, but there's so much out there that they won't even look at because it's not part of their business model. And if it's not approved by the powers that be in their world, it doesn't exist.
Mhm.
And when you see what exists out there and what is possible that doesn't harm you, but might help you, you look at the system with contempt. And, quite frankly, that's where I am. A lot of good people try to do a lot of good stuff, but they're so narrowly focused that their way is the only way
Mhm.
and they know everything, when it doesn't take much to realize that that's the problem.
No,
The problem is people, many people think that they know everything, and there's so much more out there that it's astonishing. So I've been blessed to learn that there are other things out there, and what I see happening is people going to their medical doctors being poisoned by pharmaceuticals and injectables and wondering why they're not getting better. And so if you had a leaky roof and you hired a roofing contractor to patch your roof, and you had continually been doing that for 2 decades, okay, your neighbors would be like, how come your roofing contractor's here every weekend, right? Um, you're getting taken to the cleaners. You're getting ripped off. It's like, you got a problem, you fix it, you're done, you pay them, thank you very much, and off you go. Well, when people have a health issue and they go to the doctors typically don't spend whatever time is needed to ask questions to identify, well, what is actually causing the problem? Are you eating too much of this or not enough of this? Are you stressed out? Are you, deficient in something? Is it your environment? Is it toxic exposure, EMF exposure, emotional, mental patterns that you got to deal with? No, they ask you for a couple of minutes. Oh, what are the symptoms? Here's a poison to mask the symptoms. See you in a couple of weeks, because now
Here's
you got
some more symptoms for your
now
symptoms.
you got two problems. You got the problem that you walked in with, and you're being poisoned.
Yeah.
And until people understand that is the business model, they're going to keep wasting their money getting sicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I worked out that I mean they put me on everything. Oh, they loved it. I had Graves' disease. I was really ill. It left me like out of kilter. They put me on loads of different things over the time. I've been through the
Mhm.
whole I've been through the rigors, and then anxiety, all of that. They just throw you on loads of different things: fluoxetine, clomipramine, mirtazapine. And then I was just like in a band and wanting to exit out of the world, so I was just on every drug on top. So it was just pharmaceuticals galore with and it is just you work out very very soon after. Addiction always follows, but the other thing that follows is the realization that you are saying, okay, I don't want this symptom anymore, or to notice this symptom anymore, so I will take something that will give me five other symptoms, and then I won't think about this symptom anymore. And it's like a trade-off. I'm willing to have those five symptoms, be super sweaty, have panic attacks, still do all. Oh, wait a minute, they're exactly the same symptoms as the other things. And so soon you work out that you're in an addictive, vicious cycle that is just about some people making money, and there's just no point in really taking pharmaceuticals. Like a headache tablet every now and again when I got a really steaming headache is something that is now all I got left of that world. And I have to take a thyroxine tablets every day. Though some people say there's alternatives to that as well. Hey, do you know about that? Can you give me some advice on my thyroids, doctor?
Well, there's, that's a whole big conversation, but I'll argue it a different way, okay,
Mhm.
or discuss it a different way. Um, I know that I was born with a terminal illness. Okay, it's called James Roguski syndrome, and I've been managing it fairly well for almost 65 years. Eventually, it's going to probably get me. Okay,
Yeah.
it's going to catch me by surprise. It'll flare up, and something will happen. But until then, I'm responsible for figuring out, why am I having these problems? Now, I don't want to diagnose you, but I'm pretty darn sure that you suffer from Johnny Vedmore syndrome.
No, yes. Oh,
And
you caught
and
me.
it's a horrible disease. I know,
Yeah.
right? Luckily, you're the only one who has it. And see, the point is, if most people are unaware that the WHO is in charge of what they call the ICD-10 codes. It's the 10th version of the ICD codes, which are the International Classification of Disease. Last time I checked, I think there's around 75,000 codes that I don't know how it might work in like the UK, where there's national healthcare, but in the United States, a doctor is not going to get paid by their insurance company or Medicare unless they put a code down for whatever, they've diagnosed you with. And my take on it is that process of diagnoses, where you take almost 8 billion people and you try to wedge them into 75,000 cubbyholes. Oh, you're not Johnny Vedmore. You've got Graves' disease. Oh, wait a minute. You're not Mr. Graves. You're not Mr. Alzheimer or Mr. Parkinson's or Lou Gehrig. You're Johnny Vedmore. Okay. And when they get enough information from you that they feel they can justify renaming your life and wedge you into a code that they can then bill for, okay, and have a protocol for, oh, you've got Graves' disease, cha-ching, right? Here's the protocol. They don't have to think anymore. They just do what the protocol says.
You don't have to have any responsibility or accountability either.
And once that diagnosis has been signed off on, no other doctor wants to come in and step on the toes of the person who made the diagnosis. So you never get removed from that protocol. Maybe the same doctor, maybe another doctor will now look at you the next time. Now you're Johnny Vedmore suffering from Johnny Vedmore disease or syndrome, but now you've got the symptoms of all the poisons that you're taking. And so you get another diagnosis and another diagnosis and another diagnosis. And their program does not allow them really to unravel that and get back to the beginning and go, hey, well, what the hell started, where did this all come from? What happened? Okay. And unless you're dealing with somebody who is, I never watched it, but in the United States, there was a whole series of shows, NCI, right?
NCSI, CSI,
CSI, I'm sorry, CSI.
CISINEIS, yeah, I know.
Crime scene investigation, okay?
Yeah.
If your practitioner is saying, asking you 500 questions, hey, John, what about this? And what about that? And what about the other thing? I used to work with somebody who was a homeopath, and they're just one big ball of questions, right? It's like, well, what about this? And 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 how does this, how does your system deal with this? And how do you deal with that? To actually understand what is going on with the individual man or woman so that you treat that person, not an ICD-10 code protocol. And that's the core of the problem. And when people actually do that, it's almost instantaneous. Oh, it's like, oh, this all started when this happened. It's like, oh, well, there's a clue. Okay. And so the medical system is messed up because it's predicated on hiding symptoms with poison. Now, there's always the exception, okay? But primarily, there's a cause for everything. And I'm looking out the window in my home, and our car is in the driveway. And so if a light bulb went off on the dashboard of your car, would you just get some tape and cover over the light so it doesn't bother you?
Yes, I would.
Okay. If you went to your local mechanic and said, hey, the light's going off on my dashboard, it's really bothering me. Could you please fix the light? If that's what you said, the mechanic would be justified in, disconnecting the wire or the circuit breaker, take the lamp out or put some tape over it or whatever. Oh, I fixed the light. Okay. So when people come in and they go, I have pain, or, you've got a cough or a sneeze or symptoms of this, that, and the other thing, when they say, oh, I just want the pain to go away, that's never going to solve the cause of the problem. You got to get in under the proverbial hood of your life and make those changes. There was one woman who came into the store where I worked for quite some time, and she was being helped by another coworker. And they gave up. They're like, I can't help this lady. Can you talk to her? And she was obviously, clearly, totally stressed out at work, right? And I'm like, okay, there's plenty of things that you can take that are relaxing and so forth. But she was in a state where she just didn't want to hear anything. And I said to her at one point, I said, look, it sounds like your job is killing you, right? And she goes, oh, but I have to do this, and I'm going to do it even if it kills me. It's like, I can't help you. That's the cause of the problem. You can't fix the problem if you allow the cause to continue. Okay. She stormed out of the store, and about a year and a half later, person walks into the store. She walks right up to me and she goes, I don't know if you remember me. And I'm like, kind of, it's vaguely familiar. She goes, but you were right. She's like, I quit my job and I'm all better now. Okay, great. Okay. I had another experience where this one customer who came in regularly, most people would say she was hypochondriac. She had everything. I mean, you name it, she was suffering from it. And one day I was out taking a walk, and I happened to notice that she was walking up the stairs to what I would imagine was her apartment. And maybe 20, 30 feet from where it looked like a bedroom would be, there was this high voltage transformer just going, right? And I'm like, man, I wouldn't live there if you paid me, right? So next time she came in, I said, hey, I wasn't stalking you or anything, but I happened to see, do you live on this street? And I go, I think you ought to move. That doesn't seem like it's conducive to improving your health. And she was like, oh, I have a lease and I can't get out, and money and all that sort of thing. 9 months later or so, she comes back into the store, and everybody was like, oh my God, you look great. What's going on? She goes, oh, I moved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. I had another gentleman who he was a crane operator. Okay. And, a lot of stress. I mean, people don't really think about it, but, that's actually can be a very stressful job. You get a lot of responsibility. If things go wrong, things can go really, really wrong. And could never get anything that would help him. Right. It was just nothing ever seemed to work. But this gentleman had a very unique voice. And I had switched jobs. I started working in another store. And I was in the back office, and I hear the guy's voice in this other store. And I come out and I'm looking through the store. I'm like, it's got to be him, because nobody else sounds like that. And I'm like, and I look, I'm like, oh my God, what happened to you? Right? You look great. And he goes, oh, well, I finally went to this natural path, and he put me on this detoxification product. And, he was suffering from heavy metal toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, how did that happen? Well, he had never mentioned that he was a crane operator cleaning up what in the United States they call Superfund sites, which is he was cleaning up toxic waste dumps.
Oh, nice.
And it's like, you can take all the drugs in the world, you can take all the herbs and stuff. Well, he needed to do heavy metal detox, and he needs to quit going to toxic waste dumps.
I just got a little bit of advice for you. You know that place you hang out, which is toxic to the health? Well,
yeah. I mean, if you go to a pub and you have a wonderful experience and it makes you happy, and you come away better for it, spectacular. If you go to a pub and everybody's arguing all the time, and anger and whatever, who knows, right? It's not the same for everybody. Some people need a certain type of change, and that's not the right change for other people. And so, you can try to eat well, but if you've been eating broccoli every day for the last 12 years, you probably are not deficient in broccoli. You're gonna have to eat some chocolate, right? Because there's gonna be something in.
This advice suits me. I like it. Go on. I can continue.
Right. So, it's the individual nature of
chocolate covered broccoli.
Well, I think that kind of maybe ruins two things at the same time.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You haven't put enough chocolate on it then.
So yeah,
That's
there
sorry.
you go.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but oh, everybody has to do this. Everybody has to get a COVID-19. Everybody has to wear a
Mm.
mask. Everybody has to take this, drug if some
I
measurement
love
is wrong.
saying no in public nowadays. It's so much fun, especially
Yeah.
when it's about something that people just don't, they just, everybody says yes, and you say no, and they go, uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they kind of get disorientated, don't know
Yeah.
what to do. I like it. That's kind of why I do the police auditing stuff as well, walk around
Oh,
the
tell me
streets.
more. But
Yeah. Oh, it's just like you say, I mean, because I do all of the writing is like long form. Like it takes sometimes like a year and a half, 2 years to finish an article because there's so much research involved in it that you only get there near the end. So you kind of know it offhand by then. And all of the shows and stuff are really good. They've all got their different, different things I love about doing them. But when I go out and just like wander around the street, kind of part switch off my mind and go into sort of like, just looking for police action, following the police and then checking out what the police are doing. They call it in America First Amendment auditing. We call it just police auditing. It's making sure the public money, which is actually they're crown servants, but they've got a duty to serve the public. So we making sure that they hold up to their rights. And that's major fun, but it's major fun for me. I like it, but it allows
Mhm.
me to go and have discussions with people where I don't do the thing they expect to do me to do, and it's quite fun. It's that interaction is really fun. Watching someone who can't work out why you're not doing what they expect you to do, and I think it's a good experience for everybody on both sides, both the person who knows what's happening and the person who is eventually going to think about it enough that they'll
Mhm.
come round to thinking, oh, wait a minute, maybe loads of people do loads of different things and enjoy loads of different things, and that everybody is not so bad that you can't you can't control somebody. There's an aspect of it where people believe that they have a copyright over themselves in public. They're walking around in public and they think they have some sort of right over you're in public. You get used to being in public. Actually, go further. Be in public, talk to other people, have conversations, look in
Mhm.
someone's eyes when you walk past them and say hello. Try all of it. It's amazing. I really enjoy that sort of interaction, forcing people out of the bubble that
Mhm.
they're in
Mhm.
and having a conversation, and often doing it recorded so that they feel that they have to say, okay, I'm going to take the next step and just be
Mhm.
myself. It's really nice. But other
Mhm.
people, eh, you know, we've seen it all through COVID. I mean, you've seen it a lot, haven't you?
That actually triggers a pet peeve of mine in the health industry. Um, People will often use the word homeostasis. Okay, a lot of people in the natural world say, "Oh, you have to bring your body back to homeostasis," and I really object to that word because that means the same, homogeneous, homo, and stasis, which means stagnant. So, homeostasis is that person who just does the same thing all the time and can't handle it. And I learned a decade and a half ago that the better phrase is dynamic equilibrium, or you might put it into regular English, which is ever changing balance. So, think of anybody surfing or skiing or skateboarding or, riding a bicycle or whatever. You don't just stay on a bicycle and just not move. It's always a little tiny adjustment, right, in every different way. And that's life. And so, you wake up in the morning, something's a little different. If you have the capacity to adapt to it, go with the flow, be open to that new experience, life is richer and better and, more fun. But for some people, the neuroplasticity, the ability of their mind to be flexible, um, it really does get hard. I mean, people physically, the connections in their brain and in their joints and everything else, they get stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. And, if you've ever seen somebody, I did an article on one of my subscribers. Her name's Amazing Amy, right? Go to jamesroguski.substack.com and do a search for Amazing Amy. I don't know how old she is. I don't want to say how old she is.
Don't risk it.
I don't really know, so I don't want to
don't risk it.
Yes. But she's a contortionist, and she does performances, that are, politically and socially based while doing contortion. And it's, if you're getting older and you're getting stiffer, it's a reflection of your thinking. Right? You got to maintain that flexible nature. And, that brings me all the way back down to your doctor's a liar and the lies around cholesterol.
I think I said a dirty, rotten bastard about my own doctor. And may I just quickly, when you say about the lies about cholesterol, do you link the reduction in cholesterol in our everyday lives with the fact that the brain is, well, in a sense, made of cholesterol?
Well, I don't think I would exactly agree with the fact that the brain is made from cholesterol. It's made from many, many different things. And it's not the cholesterol in the diet. It's your body makes cholesterol actually from sugar. And so it's very confusing because they've changed the definition of the word. And there's hours worth of discussion that we can have here. But the important part of it is to understand how this lie got crafted, that cholesterol is this evil demon. Okay. Well, I think most people have probably never really thought about what I'm about to discuss. They really need to. And then all of a sudden you realize just how wrong everything is. If you could envision your heart and your cardiovascular system, just try to picture, maybe you've seen a picture of it or whatever. Your heart is not a pump that pumps blood into a rigid plumbing system. Okay. I recently changed the plumbing in our 100-year-old home. And let me tell you, the inside of those pipes were really gross. Okay. We had a pipe, that I don't want to do some Illuminati signal.
Okay? It's too late. You've done it now. We all know.
You have a pipe. You have a pipe that's that big, and the opening was like that much. Okay, so it was all encrusted. In your body, what actually happens is when your heart contracts and your left ventricle pushes blood into your aorta has to be able to stretch to receive that one ventricle worth of blood. And then if you could imagine maybe trying to drink a very thick milkshake through a straw, and it's all stuck in the straw.
Drink your milkshake. Yeah, I got you.
If you pull the straw out and then you squeeze the straw to push the milkshake out, okay, that's what your cardiovascular, your arteries do. Your aorta stretches, has to relax, and then it physically contracts in a pulse. And that's the pulse that you feel, in your hand or anywhere else where you can feel a pulse. It's not that your heart pumps your blood. Your heart and your aorta and all of the branches of that arterial system have a pulse wave of contraction and relaxation and contraction and relaxation that pushes the blood through. And so if your thinking and all of the contributing factors in your diet infringe upon that flexibility, if you can't relax, then that arteries can't open up to allow that in. And so, common sense, that's going to mean you could measure higher pressure. If you go to the doctor and they say, oh, you've got high blood pressure, then you need to learn how to relax.
Yeah, I'm with you here on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so people relax in different ways. People get stressed out and tense in different ways. So I had already learned that part of it. Okay. And if you don't have the proper nutrition and you're not able to maintain a protein that is kind of like a rubber band. It's called elastin. It's an elastic, stretchy tissue. Okay. If you've ever had chicken skin, right? It's kind of stretchy, right?
Oh, don't get me hungry again.
Okay.
Chocolate chicken skin.
There you go. If your body is unable to maintain that elastic tissue and the collagen tissue that is more rigid to keep it within a border, you're going to have damage to that tissue because you're trying to shove, blood through it. And if you can't keep maintaining it, it starts to fall apart. And cholesterol is just one piece of a complicated puzzle that if there's ever any minor microscopic damage, your body may need to spackle it. Your body may need to patch a little problem until it can actually fix it. But if it's never able to fix it, just like the pipes that I took out of my house, it gets a buildup and it gets more and more and more. Your body has to be able to do the repair work, but the root problem is the inability to relax. And so I was blessed one day working in the job that I had. I went to a health fair that was down near the beach here in Hermosa Beach, California. And so all kinds of people walking around, all kinds of crazy action going on. And I shared a booth with a doctor who had a computer set up and he had a little thing that he can put on your finger. And his whole concept was every single heartbeat that you have ever had, however many millions of heartbeats you've had, is different. And that whatever the inputs are in your life is reflected in measurable aspects of that heartbeat. And so we had a break and it was a little slow for a period. And I said, hey, hook me up to your equipment and tell me, show me what you do. So he hooks me up and he said, okay, go to your happy place, whatever it is that is relaxing for you, and close your eyes and, take a minute or two and see if you can relax. And, it was a very busy place and, I was doing a lot of stuff and, we finally had a moment. So as it so happened, I was right there in my living room the day before, or I should say the evening before, and I spent about 20 minutes. We used to have an English bulldog, and I spent 20 minutes just rubbing his belly. And I can still close my eyes, and I can go there. I can still get that chill down my spine. Just a loving little moment, you and your pet, just rubbing his belly. He's loving it. And the doctor comes back and he, like a minute later, he's like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing what you told me to do. Went to my happy place, right? I'm reliving rubbing my dog's belly. Okay. He's like,
honest governor.
Yeah. He's like, well, whenever you get stressed out, just do that. Okay. 6 months later, it was kind of sort of this time of day for me. It's 9 a.m. right now when we're recording this, but it was more like maybe 11:30 or so. And I was just cranked up. I was working on some project. I was, zipping around the house, doing whatever I was doing. And at some point I was like, my heart was just going. I'm like, oh man, I wonder what my blood pressure is. Okay. And I had one of the devices you could put on your wrist and it tells you what your blood pressure is. And it was 159/133, which most people would, that would give them a heart attack. Like, oh my God, it's too high. Okay. But I felt great. Okay. So I'm like, okay, let me see if I can relax. Right. So I actually had a glass of wine. I had a cup of sleepy time tea, the type of tea that you would take before you go to bed. Took a nice hot shower. When I got out of the shower, I sat in a comfy chair and turned off the lights and just, relaxed. Took my blood pressure and it was 116/76. And the whole point of it is if you're, climbing Mount Everest or going up a flight of stairs, your heart might have to push a little harder. You might need more circulation. You might, have some tension and stuff. And so when a doctor measures that and they don't take into account that there's a reason why your blood pressure fluctuates, okay, they trick people into thinking that they have a problem. And they diagnose them with high blood pressure. Here's your poison. Mm-hmm. Let's kill your heart. Let's make your kidneys urinate more. Let's do something to mess you up, right? My mom, she's been gone for a dozen years, but, back when she was on the planet, she went to the doctor one day and he took her blood pressure, and she had waited in the office for a long time. She hadn't eaten breakfast and she was kind of stressed out. She had stuff on her mind. And he goes, "Oh, you got high blood pressure." And, bless her, she had the wherewithal to go, no, hold on a moment. I'm not feeling good. Let me go home. Let me get some lunch. Let me come back. I'll come back later in the afternoon and take my blood pressure, right? So she went and she did that. She relaxed a little bit, went back, and she's, within what they call normal. Well, normal isn't one number. Normal is, what are you doing? Is your heart responding to what you're doing? Right? Are you stressed out? Are you tense? Well, you're going to probably have some higher pressure. Are you relaxed? Are you like a limp noodle? Right? You're just happy and, you just got out of a comedy club and you had a good laugh and a beer.
How dare you call me a limp noodle?
Well, I'm not talking about measuring that. Okay. So the trick is to believe that there is a standard to which everybody should always be measured. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's just a lie. And everybody falls for the lie. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, don't they just?
And so, with almost everything, measurements of cholesterol or blood pressure or sugar, I've got to make a phone call to a friend. We had a conversation the other day because his mom is on some kind of, weird treatment for quote unquote type 2 diabetes. And it's like, well, if you've got too much sugar in your blood, why don't you go look in your pantry and see how many carbohydrates are in the products that you're eating? Okay. Maybe your kitchen and your pantry and your shopping habits are the problem. If you go to the grocery store,
I don't like where this is going now. You're going to get rid of some of my chocolate, you bastard.
No, you just need chocolate protein, or you need some coconut oil, chocolate. We were in the store the other day, and I'm always looking at labels, and it was the first time I'd ever seen popcorn that was popped in coconut oil.
Oh,
and
I know.
I didn't purchase it because it had a bunch of other junk in it. Okay. But, that just sounds yummy, just to begin with. Right. So, our diets are typically deficient in protein and healthy oils, and everything is carbohydrate because it's cheap. Mm-hmm. And so if your diet is out of balance, I'll give you a challenge, Johnny. You may not like it, but I think it'll be instructive, and for everybody else listening. Unfortunately, I did this with my mom 12, 13 years ago. Go into your pantry when it's time to clean up your kitchen, like to really do a deep cleaning. Okay. Clear off your kitchen table and take everything out of your pantry, everything out of your refrigerator, your freezer, your cupboards, wherever you keep whatever it is you have in the house.
I do this every few years. Go on.
And divide your table into 3 sections: protein, fat, and carbs. Okay. So those are macronutrients, meaning they're measured in grams. People are focused on things like cholesterol or salt, which are measured in micrograms. Well, there's 3 orders of magnitude difference there, right? 1,000 times. Things like vitamin B12 and some other vitamins are measured in micrograms, right? Which is 1,000,000 to 1, right? So don't worry about those little things. You should be 1,000 times more concerned about the balance in the macronutrients, protein, fat, and carbs. My argument is that the easy way to think about this is a balanced diet means, you hear it all the time, oh, you should eat a balanced diet. Well, what the hell does that mean? It means you need some protein, you need some healthy fats and oils, and you need some carbohydrates, and they should roughly be in balance. Okay. If you take a package of food out and you look at those three numbers, there are some foods that are inherently balanced, like nuts might be closer. Nuts will have some protein, some fat, some carbs. Okay. But almost everything else is primarily either one, protein, fat, or carb. So if you've got butter or olive oil or coconut oil or cream, that kind of thing, put that in the fat category on your table. Most protein is going to come from animal products because animal flesh is primarily protein. Okay. So, chicken, beef, turkey, ham, eggs, whatever it might be, probably going to be in the protein section. Yes, there may be protein from vegetable products, beans, legumes, that kind of thing. But you really got to pay attention, because even though they may have, some protein, even so, those things are primarily carbohydrates. When you go look in the storage that you have in your pantry, in your refrigerator, any kind of fruit, any kind of vegetable, any kind of plant matter, with a few exceptions, the structure of plants is sugar. That's what they're made from. Okay. So when our food industry processes these things, what you see is like all carbohydrates, no fat, and no protein. And when you divide them on your table and you put all of the protein in one section, all of the fat in the other section, your table will be tipping over from the massive pile of carbohydrates that you have in your pantry. How the hell are you going to eat a balanced diet? And so what I encourage people to do is, in your refrigerator, put your protein on the top shelf, put your fats and oils on the second shelf, and put your carbohydrates on the bottom shelf. Eat whatever you want to eat. But the next time you go back, you go, hey, wait a minute. I had from this shelf, I got to get something from the other shelves. In a very simplistic way, nobody does that. Everybody eats a variety of things, but at the end of the day, they're way out of balance.
Yeah.
And once you get that in place, then you can worry about the micronutrients, and so forth. But no doctor will ever tell you that, because if you do that, you won't need a freaking doctor.
Yeah, I don't think any doctor's ever given me good advice nowadays. There's been one or two. There's been one or two amongst them, but like necessary advice which can change your life, that is that simple, is not things that doctors want to do or think that is within their remit. They're looking for something wrong. They're not looking for something, how something should be right. And I have to admit, you're completely right. I live in the same house as someone who's into building muscle mass. So he's concentrated on certain areas and not others. The rest is just useless to him. He's going straight for and I have.
Oh, he's got to have some chocolate protein powder in the house. So
Oh,
there you
he's
go.
got wow, here you go. He had these fantastic chocolate protein bars, banana flavored chocolate protein bars that were I've probably from milk protein or something. And I ate them all. He didn't even get close to them. I ate all of his chocolate, but it wasn't really chocolate. It really, my body felt like it wanted it loads, not just because it tasted nice, but probably because I am out of kilter as well. I think we all are, and that's kind of what this mentality is. What lets us be locked down, because we hand over responsibility for everything that we do over to these authorities to decide what a healthy us looks like, and they're deciding for everybody at the same time. Oh, let's go on to, because I'm looking at I got a load of notes here. And we've talked before about the IHR amendments. We talked about the WHO and pandemic treaties and things like this. But you've just brought out as well, or just put out the COVID dossier. What's all that about?
Well, it's connected, and I cannot take credit for the COVID dossier. At the top of that article, there's an interview that I did with Debbie Lerman and Sasha Latapova. They have done all of the reporting for years now. And they reached out and asked me, and they've asked a bunch of people to republish their essentially their summary of the last 3, 4, 5 years of work that they've done. Long story short, what happened over the last 5 years was controlled, certainly in the United States, many other countries, maybe not everywhere around the world, but pretty darn close, by our Defense Department. Operation Warp Speed was not controlled by our Department of Health and Human Services. It was a Defense Department operation. And it's the difference between health and what they call global health security. And global health security has got nothing to do with
kind of intelligence.
What we've been,
it sounds
what
like
we've
health
been
intelligence.
talking. It's got nothing to do with what we've been talking about. It's all about biological warfare. And so I think I can summarize it this way. If you knew a woman who was of childbearing age, and say she had a young infant child, and she went to the doctor, and the doctor advised her, now this is in the United States, I think other countries are a little smarter than this. Currently, the situation is a 6-month-old infant, according to the CDC schedule, should get 3 COVID-19 injections, not of Comirnaty or Spikevax, that's for 12 years old and above, but something that they call the 2024-2025 version of it. Now, you might think that that's a doctor giving a mother advice about the health of her infant, but that's not what that is. What that is a covered person, meaning the doctor, pushing a covered countermeasure in a world of biological warfare. According to our PrEP Act, that doctor has no liability if anything goes wrong with those injections for her child. This is not for the health benefit of the child, because that injection is not approved by the FDA. It's not a drug, it's a biological, okay? So it doesn't go through the drug approval process, right? And Comirnaty and Spikevax, which is Moderna, and Pfizer is Comirnaty and Moderna is Spikevax, those have gone through and gotten a biological license. But for 6 months to 11 years old, they're still injecting infants with a biological weapon as if we're still in an emergency, because it's only authorized under emergency use authorization protocols.
Insane.
That is insane. Okay. Now, for the last 2.5 months, I've been focused on putting together a series of 27 articles summarizing as much of this information as I can. And it's kind of like an online book. There's 27 chapters, and it's under, anybody can read it for free. It's under notsafe.and.noteffective.com. And the whole point of all of this is I brought it all together under one umbrella, because if you do a search for any of the information that you'll find on notsafe.and.noteffective.com, you're not going to find it. If you do a Google search or a DuckDuckGo or Brave browser or any other whatever search, you're just going to get government propaganda. You're going to get, mainstream media and CDC, FDA, whatever. And there are literally thousands of peer-reviewed published articles showing, I don't like to say proven because that's a tricky word. There is overwhelming evidence of the harm that these injections cause. And I think the starting point is for people to understand how the language has been manipulated. The words vaccine and vaccination and safe and effective, and I'll go one step further, the word rare
Mm-hmm.
don't mean what you think they mean. And I'll start with the punchline, quite frankly, which is the word rare, right? You may have heard, someone say, oh, we have this pandemic and we have these vaccines that are safe and effective. So you have to get a vaccination and the side effects are rare. Okay. Well, none of those words mean what you think they mean. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The word rare in the US law, and you could read chapter 22 and go down to the very bottom, and you'll see where in US law, the word rare means that fewer than 200,000 Americans have whatever that ailment might be. Okay. Well, when you look at the Pfizer documentation and you understand that when people got injected with COVID-19, I'm sorry, when they got injected with the COVID-19 vaccine, they said it was going to just stay in the arm and it would trigger your immune system to understand what that was and everything would be all better. Well, they knew well in advance that that's not the case. It goes everywhere in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And if it, the proper phrase, I believe, is lipofection,
Mm-hmm.
because the lipid nanoparticles are a little bubble of fat in all of the membranes in every cell in your body, especially nerve cells and brain cells. The surface of them is primarily fat. So they merge together like soap bubbles or like, oil bubbles that you might have on some soup or something. They make tiny little circles, but then they all kind of merge together. If the injection transfects or lipofects into any cell in your body, heart, liver, kidneys, lungs, brain, muscle, bone marrow, spleen, ovaries, testes, whatever, your immune system will recognize that and go in there and just absolutely destroy it so that that microscopic section of your tissue looks like Gaza. I mean, it's just blown to smithereens. And there's, histopathology slides from autopsies where you can see how the tissue structure has just been blown away and patched over with scar tissue, fibrous tissue. Okay. So what the jabs are doing is microscopically anywhere in the body damaging tissue so that
Is this like what Mark Girardeau has written about with bolus theories? Kind of doesn't stay in one place; it goes all over the place, and that's the damage that it does all around.
it exactly. And they've known that for 5 years. They've known that for, quite frankly, decades. I mean, it's just unbelievably obvious. Okay. On top of that, there's absolutely no way that an injection in the arm can cause antibodies to be delivered and made and secreted inside the lungs. Okay. Sukrit Bhakti wrote about this at the very beginning, and many other people understood this. I understood this. He talked about it first. That's not how your immune system works. Now, maybe if you were getting an injection of some toxin to desensitize your system with some type of spike, some type of snake venom or any other type of bite, whether it's a bee sting or a scorpion or a jellyfish or something like that, you might argue that to inject something with a needle to trigger your body's response to something that gets injected by a stinger, there's a certain logic there that I could work with, okay? But that triggers the exact wrong response by the body to a respiratory ailment. And so for any doctor to ever say that injecting something into, a person's arm can help protect them against a respiratory ailment, it's like, did you not go to school? I mean, how could you be so stupid? Well, they are. And so what's going on here is because it goes everywhere in the body, there's a list that's 9 pages long. There's over 1,000 different side effects. Well, nobody, gets the same thing. So when you divide all of the reports of all of the problems, it may or may not hit the threshold of 200,000 Americans. So they say it's rare.
Mhm.
Well, if you added them all together, it's enormous.
It's lots of rare.
But the way they're messing with the numbers, okay? I'll ask you a trick question, and everybody in the audience, there's no way you know the answer to this. If you
No,
do,
go on.
it's probably because you read one of my articles. We talked about the International Classification of Disease, the ICD-10 codes, right? Your doctor says, oh, you got a problem. He's got to write the code down so he can get paid and follow a protocol. Does anybody in the audience know what the ICD-10 code is for the diagnosis of injury due to a COVID-19 vaccine?
Okay.
There's no way you know.
I'm going to say it's a trick question and there is no code.
No, there is a code. And
666.
yeah, that would be really spectacular.
Ooh, 69.
There you go. It's U12.9. Okay. Now, does your doctor know that if you come in and you go, hey, doc, I think I got the jab and I think it's causing me problems, is he going to write you up for that? Or is he going to use a different diagnosis out of these thousands of things? Okay. Well, once that happens, I'll be kind. If he doesn't know, it's not purposeful fraud, but it's constructive fraud, right? It's just wrong, right? You're being misdiagnosed, the person's being misdiagnosed. And so then the people on the other end of all of that data collection go, no, we don't see any problem here. No, nobody had any trouble, right? Now, in Germany, they had a report and German doctors were doing it properly, and they had hundreds of thousands of people who were being treated in their medical system for U12.9. Okay. Well, what if somebody dies when they sign the death certificate? Do they put the proper code in? Well, if you don't put the proper code in, if you don't diagnose the issue properly.
Do you think it's like the VAERS reporting system where it's like, only 1% of anything gets actually put through the system correctly? Or do you think the number is even more minuscule than 1%?
I think it's more minuscule than 1%. Okay. Ask your doctor, hey, doc, what's the use? The doctor's not going to know, and that's okay.
No, my doctor's a dirty, rotten bastard. He doesn't know anything.
But if they have,
he'd kill me if he could, and he'd dress in a hazmat suit while he's doing it. I'm not joking.
Well, I've already written the book. Anybody can go to yourdoctorisaliar.com and download the book. I've always given it away. Someone on his office staff, should be the one who's knowledgeable about putting in the proper codes and all that kind of thing. Doctors don't necessarily deal with those numbers. But the point is, if the diagnoses are recorded inaccurately, then you could look at all the data you want. It's fraudulent. Maybe not purposefully, it's ignorance of the facts and unawareness, but this is how this game is being played.
Yeah.
Now, you will recall that when COVID hit the scene, 5 years ago, that code number was put on everything. Oh, this person's got COVID-19, because they were incentivized. Oh, you got a COVID patient, you get more money. Okay. And so, oh, you got to do the test. Everybody's got to use this PCR fraud. And that's another one of my articles. You can go to pcrfraud.com. It's a total lie that you can use the PCR process to diagnose someone with a disease, claiming that it's caused by a quote unquote virus. Complete and total fraud, but they did it, for billions of people, made billions of dollars on the testing. And so they created a case-demic where anybody who had anything, if they could run that test and run it through enough cycles to get a positive result, cha-ching, the money would flow. And so there was this enormous incentive to diagnose something, which the word diagnose Die means two. When you put an A, it means not. And gnosis means to know.
To know, yeah.
So when you get a diagnosis, two people now don't know what's going on. And the best example of that I have, a good friend of mine, her mom has passed away, but in her 90s, but a couple of decades ago, well, actually several decades ago, she was one of the original people in West Side Story in the musical.
I was listening to West Side Story in Tony Gosling's car yesterday.
And so
that sounds like a silly, like us singing along, but it was just on the radio. So
a couple of decades ago, she called me up and she said her mom had banged her knee on a coffee table and went to the doctor. He manipulated it, made it worse, got whatever kind of x-rays or MRI, and was diagnosed with having arthritis. Well, she's a dancer, right? She didn't have arthritis. And so my friend's like, what the heck? How can that be, right? She hurt her knee. So, well, you got to understand how that process works. The word arthritis in Latin, arth means joint, and itis means inflamed or swollen. They went to the doctor. Her mom had a swollen knee, and the doctor said, you've got a swollen knee in Latin. And, oh, I've got arthritis. Well, that's just a different language, okay? If you've got aches and pains all over, and you go to the doctor and they do a couple of tests, ask you a couple of questions. Oh, you've got fibromyalgia, fiber muscle pain in Latin. Oh my God, I've got fibromyalgia, okay? It's just trickery. It's just trickery. And so what they're doing with the word rare, now this is the mind blower. It's in the law. If more than 200,000 Americans have a specific diagnosed disease or ailment, it's still considered rare if there's no drug that the drug company has made to profit from that disease. I shit you not. 1 million people could have the disease, but if there's no approved drug treatment for it, it's still considered to be rare. Now, if you can't smell the lie in that law, okay, and you listen to people go, oh, well, the side effects are rare, because they can't make any money off of the side effects because they're the ones who caused the problem and they don't know how to fix it. This is the trickery, the pharmakia, the lie, the deception, the age of deceit that we're living in. And the only way out of it is not from some savior, president, or health minister, or pundit, or whatever, changing the world. Each and every person has to wise up and see through the BS and call out that BS when they see it and just say, no, you're lying to me, and I'm not going to use your services anymore because your system isn't designed to make me healthier. Very simple question. If you have a healthcare practitioner that you frequent, okay, that you go for their advice and therapies or whatever, do they profit when you are healthier, or do they only profit when you are suffering? Okay. Now, if you have a deal with, like say a chiropractor, and you go, hey, look, I'll pay you a retainer, like you might pay a lawyer. And, there are some chiropractors who have a deal where, you give them X amount of money per month, and you can come in as often as you want, and they'll give you an adjustment. Well, if you're healthy and you don't go in, they just collect the retainer and they're good. Okay. If you need them, then, they have to treat you. So they actually benefit if you remain healthy. So if they give you, a proper adjustment, and they give you good advice about nutrition and everything else going on with your life, they would actually profit by having more time on their hands while you're paying them a retainer. Same thing with acupuncture. If you can find a practitioner, you give them a stipend, and if you go in for a checkup, right, go in for some wheel alignment, like you take your car in to get your wheels aligned to keep your tires from blowing up when you're on the highway. Um, it's far better to go in and maintain your health so that you don't have a problem. And that's not the system in which we work.
No,
That
and
isn't how it works.
I feel that there's something else peculiar because when you were talking about that, I was thinking about the people. This is from the perspective of people often who want to trust their doctor, who want to trust their medical practitioner, who believe what they say, who believe they've been trained up. Um, I think I would get the opposite most times from my doctor because my doctor would be worried about giving me a diagnosis because I'm likely to call him a dirty, rotten bastard to his face. So they've had enough experience. If my the other, I take I have to take levothyroxine, so thyroid stuff because I don't have any thyroids anymore. They took them out, and so I need them regularly. And every now and again, you get checked up, and they say, "Oh, you need to increase your the amount." And they did that recently. They said, you know, they checked out. I had been flipping backwards and forwards between South America for a while, so I was on a lower dosage for some reason. And they said, "Oh, you know, you need to heighten the dose, so do that." But I didn't get the message. They said just put up 25 micrograms. I put up 50 micrograms, and then I went to a blood test, and they said, "Oh no, it's fine. Stay at that. Stay at 175." And I said to them, "No, I've been taking 200." And they said, "Oh no, 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 you should take 175. You shouldn't be doing that because." And I was like, "No, no, no. I've already done that, and you've tested it and told me that it was correct." Now, normally in the past, I would have expected them to argue the toss over that and try and go with whatever their procedure says. Well, you're not allowed to, that bigger increment because then it'll cost us more money, etc. Instead, they looked at my file. He knows I'm going to call him a dirty rotten bastard, so he didn't argue with me at all. And I think there comes to a point where if you properly argue with your doctor about points that you do not like, that you think are wrong, that etc., you'll actually have them act in the other way, where they will purposely try and not diagnose you with anything because then they have to see you more often. And so it works on both ways in the wrong way. On the one side, for people like us, they don't want to come, you know, our knowledge or our ability to say, no, I'm not going to accept that is too much for them. And on the other side, they know they can just take advantage of those people. So what they're looking for is the marks. And unfortunately, society is full of rubes at the moment because we've been well trained and, you know, cornered to an extent. You know, we've only got these guys to go to. We've been told this is all we can trust, and everybody else are kooks. In actual fact, we're being led to the kooks, and one way or the other, they're going to give you bad advice.
No, I understand. I understand what you're saying. And, you know, the question really is, um, if you don't trust the person that you're going to for health advice, the only advice I ever give people, I have learned that it's not my job to tell people what they should do. My job is to give them some ideas of things that they could decide to do. And the problem is the information is not available. You go online, you go looking for this information, you're just going to mostly get confused. And so, what people, I think, if I give any advice at all, um, get a second opinion from a totally different type of practitioner. And I did this, I've done it a handful of times, but I'll give you this true life experience. Have you ever heard of the concept of iridology, meaning the iris of your eye? There's a whole study. Bernard Jensen started this. He's passed on,
But
but
you can tell like you can tell what's wrong with you by your
exactly.
iris. Yeah,
Generally, they'll take a very high resolution photograph of your eye. You know, the structures in the eye are quite frankly fascinating, and they have a map that lays
3D.
over to different body parts and all that sort of stuff. So I was at a health fair probably 15 years ago, and the daughter-in-law of Bernard Jensen, who founded the science, and she learned from him and was practicing, was set up, and she had a camera. And so the deal was they would take a photograph of your eye, blow up your eye to be about this big. And this was 15 years ago, before digital everything. So they would develop the film and send you a picture of your eye, and they would keep a picture, and then you would set up a phone consultation. Okay. So she had this intake form, where you give your information, a bunch of questions. And I'm like, I'm not going to check off any of these boxes. I mean, I don't really have any health problems, but I'm not going to tell you what's wrong with me. I want you to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so time went by. I got the picture. We, set up a consultation, and oh man, she nailed me.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, my life was in my eye, and
Yeah.
she was just reading the
I
picture.
had
And
this experience with a really good chiropractor in France. On
okay,
my back, just was able to tell me when the different damage was done, and I knew exactly which points in my life he was talking about. It was very interesting.
it's there's computer systems that are like straight out of Star Trek. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, but Dr. McCoy used to have this little device, and it would measure energy and feedback energy, and you could identify what was wrong and fix it. With that stuff exists.
Mhm.
Okay, I've experienced it. It's astonishing. Okay, so the point of the story is I did not give her any of my medical history. I said, here I am. You tell me what you see. And this is what I encourage everybody to do. Find a good homeopathic practitioner or chiropractor or Chinese, traditional Chinese medical practitioner or Ayurveda or whatever it is, that suits your fancy, and walk in and don't tell them anything. Don't say,
Mm.
I've got Graves' disease or diabetes or high blood pressure or this, that, or the other thing. Here I am. Um, Work your magic. You tell me what, whatever kind of, you got, whatever it is you need to know. Okay. And what you'll probably find is that their view of you is completely and totally different than what you've been told.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is people get labeled, right? Oh, you're a cancer patient, you're a diabetic, you've got this cycle. I mean, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of psychological diagnoses. Okay. Um, just come in as you are and ask them to observe you, and don't lead the witness. Let
Mm-hmm.
them observe what you'll see, or what they see in you. And you'll probably get a more accurate assessment of your situation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a system came out of San Diego. I think the gentleman's name is Paul Chek. I think it's Chek. Highly recommend it. When I was working managing the store, a gentleman came in and he said he was a personal trainer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's the only personal trainer that I have ever met who was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And what their system did was they would literally give you what I call a truly physical examination. You'd spend some time, they would put you in different positions to see how flexible you were and where your body was tight, and have you do some, I wouldn't even call them exercises, I would call them various motions and things like that. And they would observe how the musculature was out of balance. And they didn't use this word, but they would prescribe or recommend very specific exercises, unlike any exercises you've ever imagined, okay, to specifically strengthen the muscles that they had observed were weak or turned off even in your system. And if you're exercising, working out, going to the gym, working with a personal trainer, and they haven't first observed you and recommended specific exercises to balance your body, they don't know what they're doing. Okay. And if you take that and you apply that to every field of medicine, you realize that your doctors, I debated with myself, and I ended up saying that, the book is Your Doctor is a Liar, but I debated between Your Doctor is a Liar and Your Doctor is an Idiot. And I could have written both books. They're kind of one and the same. They don't know what they don't know, and they don't want to know.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you run into somebody who knows more, you look at the medical profession in disgust. And
It's
so
really interesting. I mean, you sparked something in there, a memory that made me laugh. And I thought about it as you were talking about that. I was comparing it with something else. I was comparing it with my mum going to psychic readers back in the day. She really into psychic stuff, she really desperately into me, my sister and my mum. I had a couple of weird experiences in my life, but I don't put anything down to a definitive. I don't see any point in trying to hang out in the realm of the dead or anything like that.
not quite yet.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
maybe someday.
Maybe
Yeah.
someday it'll be
Yeah.
peaceful. That's for sure. I've never been really into it. However many kooky experiences I have, or experiences that seem to be like, oh wow, that's amazing. That's so coincidental. I'm like, I don't mind. It's not going to make too much difference to my experience of life. So I always tried to, like, when my mum went to these readers, they would often give them a tape to go away with. So they would this was back in the 90s, so they'd get their cassette tapes out and they'd put it into their cassette and they stick on the record and
I
you'd
have a
listen to
friend
the
who's
reading.
done that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And my mum would come back with all of these different. She would tell me. First of all, I would listen to my mum tell me the experience. She would say, "Oh, I went there, and she would talk about this, and then they said about this, and then they said about that, and it was amazing, and this happened, and this happened, and it was amazing." And then I'd listen back to the tape, and my mum wouldn't realize it, but she'd be telling the person absolutely everything that allows them to trick her into thinking that they know absolutely everything. And it was almost systematic every single time. And the desperation to know, the same with the medical community, the desperation to know from the patient and the desperation to solve their their ailments and their issues, that leads on to a hoax, psychic fraudster. It's the same sort of thing. The doctor can just take what he hears from you and say, oh, well, I can look like I'm doing my job here. And doesn't then have to look at you, doesn't then have to check you out, doesn't then have to actually inspect what you're saying. He's gonna just, or she's gonna just, give you back the old psychic one too. Oh yes, I know.
I went through a certification course in a specific type of massage, and anyone
Tell me
very
more.
well. It actually was very connected into people hold tension in certain parts of their body, and it's an emotional response to trauma. Okay, and so it was actually called the Institute of Psychostructural Balancing. And so if you've ever had a massage or ever given somebody a massage, you're massaging, whether it's their back, shoulders, legs, whatever, and you can feel the difference where the tissue is pliable and flexible and responsive, and then you hit the spot that's just like a rock. Okay, and you're like, oh, what the heck is stuck in here? And so I had a personal experience where in the course, the students would practice on each other. Okay, and to be honest, I went for weeks without getting a good massage. Okay, and then finally teamed up with somebody who seemed to be, much better at it. And it just so happened that we were doing leg massage on the hamstrings and the glutes and things like that. And it was a beautiful day. It was an 8-hour day. It was like all day, class. And it was a lovely day. Everybody was in a good mood. And I finally got a good massage. And I had about a 45-minute ride home. And when I got in the car, I was just angry. I was just furious. Okay. And I realized that it was probably something had been locked up in my legs. I was actually born with club feet. And in my younger years, I had surgeries and all that kind of stuff. And so I had some fun with it. I rolled up my windows, and for about 30 minutes of the ride home, with every breath that I would take in on the exhale, I would just scream. So I had like a 30-minute primal scream therapy, right? And I came home feeling great, but it turned me off to doing massage, because when someone is working on another person and they actually do the work that needs to be done, it releases crap from the past, and you're there to catch their anger. And it's really treacherous. It's really treacherous. And I don't think people recognize the psychostructural, body-mind connection. A lot of people's physical health issues are just buried trauma. At the time, I knew this person who had been in an accident, and they were in the passenger side of a car, and out of the corner of their eye, they saw another oncoming car. It got hit on the passenger side and blacked out. And the person came to in the hospital. But what had happened was somehow, I don't know if they were thrown from the car or somehow got out of the car, but she was found like crawling across a field nearby, totally unaware of what happened. No visible harm whatsoever, but chronic pain from that day forward. Okay. And so you could take all the drugs you want, you could take all the herbs and vitamins and minerals and all that sort of stuff. If you have an emotional trauma or a mental pattern or a subconscious programming, okay, until you deal with it, the system is just going to soak you and poison you and do everything else. They're not going to properly identify the problem. How many people do you think you know who have some buried trauma that isn't being properly addressed? I'm going to say just about everybody.
Yeah, I'm going to say it too.
You think you can medicate that? You can bury it and make it worse, but it's going to keep coming up until you deal with it.
Yeah, most definitely. I experienced this throughout my life. I've experienced this throughout my life. And we all have it. This is a lot of the trauma we're trying to escape and we're trying not to confront is the stuff that really does leave us with ailments. When you were talking earlier about the heart, I was thinking about 2023, it was like a collection of really bad years that led to one of the worst like periods of my life. I'd say most stressful, really, really sad. So worried about something that was devastating, and the pain in my heart, it was just it was almost heart stopping. And I could understand that there was, I could see the significant link on me getting more stressed to my heart feeling like it just didn't want to keep beating. And that is such a, is a link there. The mental, physical is just, it's working together. It's a symbiotic relationship, and it's one we don't really, I think it's been purposely, mental health has been purposely cut away at to mental health funding. I mean, especially in Britain, it's been cut away so much because it'll benefit pharmaceutical companies for quick fixes is all that they can offer. Quick fixes is all that they can offer. Listen, we're coming up to the end here. That's a brilliant. I wanted to talk about a bit more. I wanted to talk a little bit about the World Health Organization and all of that, but I don't think it fits well with the conversation we've had. We've had quite a good conversation there, and we could talk about that on another occasion. I know that I'm hopefully going to be doing other shows coming up soon. So when there's things like that come up, you've got to come back and talk to me. But
No, absolutely.
what's your I mean, go on. What were you going to say?
Well, we didn't pre-plan this conversation. It just went where it went. And so when I get the recording of this, it's going to go on a page that I have, which is thecompleteguidetohealth.com, thecompleteguidetohealth.com, because, this type of holistic view of, Johnny Vedmore has had a life, and, all of the experiences that you have, you're managing it, you've changed and do different things, and you are where you are right now. Okay. I'm a unique person. There's almost 8 billion others, like us, but different, similar. And if a person's health advisor, doctor, practitioner, whatever you want to call it, if they're just plugging you into a protocol and a system and treating you like, an automaton, a robot, just plugging you right in, and they don't know you, they don't know what's going on with you, you need to find a new practitioner to help you, guide you. Maybe you can't do it all by yourself. Most of us can't see our own crap, right? You need somebody to look at you, and, it might just be when you look at someone's posture, their face is all contorted. I know mine's a little bit crooked. What does that mean? Where are you holding your tension? There's a system called Rolfing. Ida Rolf started it. And one of the most memorable stories was a person had surgery on their lower leg and developed a shoulder problem. Okay. Well, when you understand that the whole body is all connected, and if you imagine that you were wrapped up in cellophane, okay, some sort of like cellophane wrap, like for your food, and you cut part of it and you bunched it up and you sewed it all together, and so it was tight down here, you might feel something in your leg pulling on your shoulder. Mm-hmm. And so, they did body work on the leg, and the shoulder problem went away. Mm-hmm. You go to an acupuncturist, and they look at you, or if it's a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, they'll look at your tongue, and they'll look in your eyes, and they'll measure your pulse, and they'll stick a needle in your ear, and you're like, hey, my problem's someplace else, it's not in my ear. Yeah, but the energy's flowing all around in the system, and you measure where the warning signs is one thing, but where the actual problem is may be somewhere totally different. And I'm just going to tell you that your medical doctor has no clue at all about
you're
that.
On bastard.
I've watched. There's plenty of videos online of people who were incapacitated. I mean, can't use this word anymore, but they were crippled. Okay, and it turned out, with various testing, that they had so many different metals in their mouth, gold and silver and mercury and nickel and, dental work, that when they addressed what butchery had been done to their teeth, their bodily health problems, which were incapacitating, boom, went away. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so the secret to health is unique to every individual person. And if you're dealing with a healthcare practitioner who is in denial of that reality and doesn't know how to handle it, you got to find yourself a new practitioner. You got to find something new. And this is going to go on that. I encourage people to go to the complete guide.
Tell people all the places that they can find you. So you named
the
a
easiest,
lot of websites. You've got a few.
The easiest thing, all of the websites and domains and such that I have, all head back to jamesroguski.substack.com. It just makes it easier to find older articles. The problem is spelling my name. So as long as they do that right, Roguski, jamesroguski.substack.com, and James Roguski on Twitter. And the reason for giving you my Twitter handle is because my phone number is right there in my profile. 310-619.
You're a madman, James. You're a madman.
I'm actually quite happy. Quite happy.
So. When I say you're a madman, I mean in the best possible way. Join us, those who like to actually talk to people and communicate with the world and live life and etc. Hey, thanks for coming on. And
thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's not going to be the last conversation we have. James, thank you.
Thank you much.
What we know is that we will end up with many more unemployed